It looks like the time's coming, folks. This report in the Financial Times, of all papers, just out 1 hour ago. It's talking about some very grave news. What's happening is that in the heart of West Africa, see, a dangerous neighbourhood. We've got Niger in the middle there. Nigeria, where Boko Haram militants and criminal gangs are causing havoc close to the Niger border. Chad, rebel forces threaten the quasi-military regime of President Idris Deby. We've got Libya, which is where all of the refugees are heading for to come to Europe. Renewed fighting over control of the battle-scarred country threatens to tip it into civil war, so that'll be, the replacement, the Benghazi, to failure. So that says in Algeria that Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb continues to operate in the country. Burkina Faso, roughly 500 people have been killed in political violence since November. Mali, jihadi insurgencies in the centre and in the north of the country are spreading across the Sahel, which I'd imagine is the desert, like a part of the Sahara. I'm pretty much sure the Democratic Republic of Congo is there. One of these countries, and obviously you've got the instability of the area as is, never mind on top of Israel funding all the insurgents. So it says, one of the world's poorest nations is at the centre of international efforts to fight jihadis. So you've got a caveat in that this is a herding up of all of the millions and millions and millions, and we'll see, it is reported. And there's 25 comments, I think, on this so far, and it's only been out 1 hour. Like, I've literally just seen it in the news feed. See, look there. April the 11th. Hey, that's weird. Why is it telling me it was released 1 hour ago? Look. And South Africa. Hey, how did I even find that? Well, what I was doing, I was looking at Moody's. Moody's have refused to gauge, look at this, 1 in every 3 gay men in South Africa is HIV positive. Yeah, Moody's have, we are rid of this, look. Financial Times, 1 hour. That 1 hour means when it was released, like there, 2 days. Looks like 3 days now because it won't focus. 4 days. See, that's when it released. That's not what it's saying on the actual page. The internet is being messed around with. So it says, Niger sits in a dangerous neighbourhood. 6 of the 7 countries at borders face crises of one degree or another. Across its northern border, a military strongman's march on Tripoli threatens to send Libya back into civil war. To the south, Boko Haram and criminal gangs wreak havoc along much of the border with Nigeria, and the jihadi insurgency has bled into neighbouring Chad. Al-Qaeda and the Islamic Maghreb haunts Algeria's desert lands, and the ethnic clashes and jihadi insurgencies of northern and central Mali have spilled over into Burkina Faso, leading the precipitous collapse of parts of a country once viewed as a model of stability. That's Mali. Now, here's a little thing that I found that's dead interesting there. See this much? Right, his name is William Barr, and he is the United States Attorney General, the current one. And the United States Attorney General is the chief lawyer of the federal government of the United States, head of the United States Department of Justice per 28 USC 503. Right, and oversees all government legal affairs. Now, the interesting thing about this fella is that his father, Donald Barr, right, can't remember where I found it anyway, but this is his dad. Oh my god, why doesn't the stupid computer just have pages loaded? Sorry about this, folks. If I press refresh, it'll come up. Yeah, Donald Barr. Right, Donald Barr. Donald Barr, 1921 to February 5th, 2004, was an American educator and writer. He taught English at Columbia University. He was headmaster at Dalton School and science fiction movies. Barr was born in Manhattan, New York, the son of Estelle Nee de Young, a psychologist, and Pelham Barr, an economist. You'll see where this is going, can't you? He and his wife Mary, Margaret, had 4 children. William P. Barr, who served as Attorney General in the George Bush administration and the Donald Trump administration. And then that's one of the children, William, the one we've just seen. But the father died in Langhorne, Pennsylvania. He was born into Jewish family and converted to Catholicism. Like, I'm not too gripey about the Catholicism thing because, you know, there's tons of Jewish conversos, and that is one of the things that they hide behind, you know, from within. And I'm not saying that, I approve of Jews being allowed into the Catholic Church. Quite the contrary. But what my gripe is that there's obviously something of a storm brewing in Africa which is going to affect Europe immensely. Now, I'm not seeing Donald Trump or any world leaders, and it does go into this a little bit, this article. I haven't read all of it because I've literally just seen it and thought, time to sound the alert. So it says, in his office in Niger's sleepy capital Niamey, Defence Minister Kala Mutari points to a large map of his country that sits at the heart of the Sahel, the semi-arid strip that runs the width of Africa, and describes a region in turmoil. Because, like, when you go over to East Africa, you've got Kenya, where obviously there's been all sorts of civil wars. You've got Somalia, all sorts of civil wars. You've got Ethiopia now, where there's massive fires burning the rooftop of Africa, I think it's called. Even back on the west, you've got, what's the area that's got no name, and they've named it South something. Sudan, is it? Sudan. Yeah, you've also got the Sudan. You know, these are massive areas that reflect what happens in South Africa, whereby Israel pushes all of the foreign peoples into a concentrated area just to cause chaos. And now Moody's, you know, they've almost junked South Africa. They haven't, because they've refused to sort of judge on it, but they've said that it's still at investment grade. But you know, there's massive speculation about South Africa being able to come up into, you know, higher investment grade, like AA status or something like that. It's never going to happen. They're always going to be on the brink of junk. You know, junk is where it's soon going to be heading for, and this is the result of what's getting planned for Europe now, and obviously America, Russia. You know, they're not sending them to China, they're sending China in. I might go into that a little bit, because I've got a few things that I can show which are recent and corroborate what I'm sort of suggesting here about Israel is behind all of this, pulling all the strings. China's pushing into Africa, causing all sorts of tensions and pressures, and there's just massive, you know, shady business going on all over the place, and it's all contrived in order to push the Africans on Europe, and then, you know, Israel, well, on Europe, America, and wherever, and then Israel can trigger the next phase then, because it's got all its men in position, as it were. So, so just 10 miles away, French Reaper drones and Mirage fighter jets take off daily on missions targeting a growing number of sophisticated and violent extremist groups. They've probably all got iPhones. Principally in neighbouring, and Toyotas, principally in neighbouring Mali as part of Operation Barkhane, France's 4,500 troop-strong campaign in the Sahel. So again, you know, the central banking system is supposed to govern that terrorism can't get funds, and yet these, you know, these insurgencies who are reaching the Financial Times newspaper with a warning, and you'll see more about the warning as we go. Are they not using central banking systems to funnel money through? You know, I would suggest they are. So a surge in violence over the past 6 months has left thousands dead and hundreds of thousands displaced across one of the poorest regions of the world. Now, some in Niamey fear that renewed fighting in Libya could lead to some of the nearly 1 million migrants stranded there to flood across its border. So even the Africans are afraid of African migration. I mean, 1 million Africans pouring into your country when you're already a poor country in Africa. Are they all going to fit on the couch? So it's a miracle that our country is still standing, giving these threats, Mr. Mutari says. Of Niger's 5,800 kilometre border, that's about what, 4,500 miles, is it, something like that? Just 200 kilometres along the tiny coastal of Benin remains mostly undisturbed. So of all of that 5,800 kilometres, just 200 kilometres of it remains undisturbed, which means 5,600 kilometres of it remains disturbed. The situation is terrible, he says. The Niger authorities recently broke up a sleeper cell of jihadis operating in Niamey that Mr. Mutari says was targeting Nigerian and foreign military interests. I wonder what foreign military interests means. Obviously, Financial Times doesn't use the triple brackets as everyone else will, because it means Israel, doesn't it? Foreign military interests, come on. The raid has added to the anxiety of regional and Western powers. So nothing about Jews, but as I've just shown, the head man of the legal everything foreign policy of America is a Jew, a converso. So the raid has added to the anxiety, and as a matter of fact, wasn't it under George W. Bush where all sorts went on with like Yemen and Sudan and Libya and all sorts? Pretty sure it was. So he's the same Attorney General. So the Niger authorities, in fact, the last Attorney General, not the last, sorry, another Attorney General who was Jewish was Benjamin P. Judah. He was the Attorney General for the Confederacy. After the Civil War, scarpered off to the City of London, where he was accepted into the bar. So Judah Philip Benjamin was a lawyer and a politician who was a United States Senator from Louisiana, a cabinet officer of the Confederate States, and his escape to the United Kingdom at the end of the American Civil War, an English barrister. At the end of the Civil War, he was an English barrister. Another Jew becomes English, just sprinkle some magic fairy dust. Benjamin was the first Jew to be elected in the United States Senate who had not renounced that faith. And he was the first Jew to hold a cabinet position in North America. He was successively the Attorney General, Secretary of War, and Secretary of State of the Confederate States of America. He was born into Sephardic Jewish parents from London, who had moved to St. Croix in Danish West Indies when it was occupied by Britain during the Napoleonic Wars, which obviously the Jews had a massive hand in as well, even pretty much ruining Britain at that time and buying up all the stuff. Seeking greater opportunities, his family immigrated to the United States, eventually settling in Charleston, South Carolina. Judah Benjamin attended Yale College but left without graduating. He moved to, probably just got like his network, he moved to New Orleans where he read law and passed the bar. He rose rapidly both at the bar and in politics. Wow, what a surprise. He became a wealthy planter and slave owner and was elected to and served in both houses of the Louisiana legislature prior to his election by the legislature of the US Senate in 1852. There he was an eloquent supporter of slavery. After Louisiana seceded in 1861, Benjamin resigned as senator and returned to New Orleans. Anyway, you can read about that much at your leisure. Let's get back to current affairs in Niger. So the raiders, what's this? The Niger authorities recently broke up a sleeper cell of jihadis more like, operating in Niamey that Mr. Mutari says was targeting Nigerian and foreign military interests. The raid has added to the anxiety of regional and Western powers that the violence is spiralling and could yet spread to the coast of West Africa and beyond Europe, sparking fears among some Europeans about the potential spike in migration. France, the main European player in the region, has built a series of military bases along the Mali-Niger border in order to contain the threat and signed an expanded security cooperation deal with Burkina Faso in December to address the spike in violence. So we're right in the, we're right in the maelstrom of what's going on here. There's a veritable shitstorm coming down the pipe, as has been predicted. Well, this is it. Give it 6 months. Merkel will just, everyone can just come to Europe, and the migration from Africa, and then the Chinese will be sending their military might over to Africa to police their secured interests that Israel has granted them with the US dollar via Wall Street, via the pensions, all of the poolings, mortgages, everything that they've siphoned off America will be getting poured into buying up Chinese military presence in and around Africa, whether it be naval or army, ground troops. But there are already shopping centres, right? Chinese shopping centres in South Africa. Right, Chinese shopping centres. Right, and that's not the news. Chinese shopping centres in South Africa is not the news. The news is that they have armed guards, like Chinese armed guards. So, the whole thing is like a big protection racket. Let's see, it comes up. Safety as a priority at shopping centres in Gauteng. That's it, I think. Shopping mall cash solution list of shopping centres. Look at that. Pretoria malls among South Africa's most dangerous. I think this is the one. No, it's not the report I've seen, but this is not British internet. This is just I don't have a bank account, so I can't get any proper feed. So I just get like a bit of internet here and there, and it doesn't kick in till later. The faster speeds. This is like dial-up. Safety as a priority in shopping centres in Gauteng, an assessment of existing security measures by Natasha Luchman-Marine, submitted in accordance with the requirements of the degree for Magister Technology in the subject security management in the University of South Africa. Supervisor, blah blah blah. Oh, excuse me. No, this isn't that one, but you can read that one yourselves at your leisure. That's 188 pages. Let's just see. Thankless task, but someone in Hong Kong has to do it. Meet the men and women who keep people and property safe. South Africa struggles to contain xenophobia. China high-tech war on its Muslim minority. Algeria in revolt. We woke up and we will pay. Oh, and you will pay. Hey, why can't I find that? Anyway, if you do a rummage around, you'll find that there is literally Chinese shopping malls in South Africa with armed guards on the turrets. I know when I was in the Philippines, you get searched there going into the shopping malls. And Duterte is obviously a little Jew lackey, isn't he? So France, the main European player in the region, has built a series of military bases along the Mali-Niger border in order to contain the threat, and signed an expanded security cooperation deal with Burkina Faso in December to address the spike in violence. With the disappearance of the Libyan state, Niger is now the border with the West. Mr. Mutari says, if Niger falls, there is nothing. Now, I would say that is fairly, that's a statement that, like, it was like Germany in 1939. That was the last border, and now it's Niger is the last border. So landlocked Niger, a country twice the size of Ukraine, is ranked last in the UN's Human Development Index of 189 countries. Its neighbours Chad, Burkina Faso and Mali are all in the bottom 10. The threats in the Sahel are, at the moment, largely domestically driven. Jihadi groups, see what I mean? You've got to get funds like this. They're not knitting jumpers and knitting socks, and selling them in the pubs to get like pin money to buy state-of-the-art jeeps and Boss Togs. Is it? What the fuck's that? This is like big money funding. There is go watch about the Kafirs on Walter Burian's site on YouTube. So Burkina Faso and Mali are all in the bottom 10. The threats in the Sahel are at the moment largely domestically driven. Jihadi groups exploiting local grievances ranging from centuries-old conflicts between farmers and nomadic pastoralists to governance vacuums and the brutality of individual security forces. But these threats also take in criminal gangs, ethnic militia, vigilante groups and traffickers in drugs, arms and people. Sounds like Israel to me. So that's the Libyan National Army fighters loyal to General Khalifa Haftar. There are fears in Niger that renewed fighting in Libya could see some of the nearly 1 million migrants stranded there flood across its border. Well, if you can't get into Italy, Spain, France, if you can't get into Europe, then I'm sure Niger is looking as good as Algeria, where you'll be packed off into the desert. And where have you got Egypt on the other side? That's got the Jewish Prime Minister. His name is ISIS. So I'm sure it is, isn't it? The president of Egypt. I'm sure his name is ISIS, because he met Netanyahu in New York, didn't he, last year? Oh, ISIS. It's ISIS backwards. And he's from the Jewish district in Cairo. What a surprise. So we're very concerned about what's happening in the Sahel, says Rear Admiral Heidi Berg, Director of Intelligence for US AFRICOM, which oversees the Pentagon's operations in Africa. Alright, let's have a look at Heidi Berg. Her name's not Heidi Salami. Rear Admiral, Navy, military, which one do you want to look at? Let's have a look at the Navy and military. So Heidi Berg is the Rear Admiral. She was born in California. She was born in La Crosse, Wisconsin and raised in Colton, Virginia. She is a 1991 graduate of the US Naval Academy and was commissioned as a cryptologist. She studied Russian at the Defense Language Institute in 1992 and Arabic at the Kalimat Institute in Cairo, Egypt. Berg received a Master of Philosophy in Modern Middle Eastern Studies and Arabic from St Anthony's College, Oxford University, UK, and that is Newtown, Oxford University. Holy. Operational tours include Navy Security Group Activity Rota, Spain, where Berg flew over 10,000 hours as a communications intercept evaluator on board EP-3 aircraft in support of operations Provide Promise Sharp Guard. She served on board the USS Kidd, Commander Cruiser Destroyer Group, on the Saratoga, on the Key West, while assigned to Naval Security Group activity in Rota in Spain. She participated in fleet staff talks with the post-Soviet Russian Navy and in the Mediterranean while at 6th Fleet aboard the La Salle in Gaeta, Italy, followed by a tour of Royal Air Force Menwith Hill Station, Harrogate in Britain. In 2012, Berg deployed to Afghanistan as director of the International Security Assistance Force, Red Team, at ISAF headquarters in Kabul. As director, she led alternative analysis and provided strategic assessments, recommendations to the ISAF commander. Following deployment, Berg served as the Deputy Plans and Policy at Fleet Cyber Command, US 10th Fleet. So Berg's command tours include the Navy Information Operations Command in Bahrain, where she was responsible for providing theatre, airborne and surface signals intelligence, SIGINT, support to Iraqi Freedom, Enduring Freedom and Persian Gulf maritime operations, and the Navy Element Commander of the Defence Intelligence Agency and the Director of the Joint Military Intelligence Training Center. Her first flag assignment is the Director of Intelligence, US Africa Command. Staff assignments include Airborne, SIGINT, Requirements, Officer and Information Operations Strategy and Policy under Chief Naval Operations, OPNAV. Staff Deputy National Intelligence Officer for Military Issues at the National Intelligence Council in Langley, Virginia. That's the home of the CIA. Military Advisor to the Deputy Director of National Intelligence, where she supported daily intelligence briefings to the President and provided direct intelligence support to the National Security Advisor, National Security Council, and Congress Information Warfare and Foreign Area Office Division Director at Navy Personnel Command, Strategic Advisor to the Chief of Naval Operations and Acting Digital Warfare Office. Berg has been awarded various personal campaign and unit and service awards. That was updated on the 21st of January 2019. A real stay-at-home mum. So yeah, see if it's got any news on. Well, it's the same link. Look, Financial Times, 1 hour. That's when you know when I pressed her name in under news. So Nigeria, Obama Game Express protecting the Gulf of Guinea. That was 6 days ago. In her remarks, so she's made remarks. Let's have a look at this. So we've put a name to the face and now we've put a... So this is on All Africa. And it says Nigeria Obama Game Express. It's posted on 8th of April by Chantal Izob and Mary Ovey. Eziobi, sorry. Chanel Eziobi and Mary Ovey write that the 2019 Operation Obama Game Express, an international maritime interdiction exercise comprising 20 African nations and 11 foreign allied countries, may have come and gone, but the lessons learned are inherent for the protection of the Gulf of Guinea waters, lying across 19 coastal and island states. The Gulf of Guinea coastline, which stretches from the waters off Senegal to the south of Angola, is a treasure trove of rich resources. Comprising 26 countries grouped into the two regional economic communities, namely Economic Community of Central African States, 11 states with the return of Rwanda, and Economic Community of West African States, 15 states, and the GOG countries, total population of 472 million, with 160 and 310 million inhabitants for ECAS and ECOWAS respectively. So they're like the regions. Well, ECOWAS is the Economic Community of West African States, and that's the report, isn't it, about Niger, saying that, West Africa it's a hotbed, it's about to erupt, covering a surface area of 11 million square kilometres, including a coastline of over 6,000 kilometres from Senegal to Angola. The GOG countries have estimated 24 billion barrels of crude oil reserves. That is 5% of global reserves. 5 million barrels of crude oil per day. How the hell are they producing this amount of thingy, and then these conflicting reports saying that, these are the world's poorest countries? Go look on Israel's door, isn't it? Yeah, go look at Israel. So, hosted by the Chief of Naval Staff, Vice Admiral Ibok Eti Ibas, 8 Nigerian Navy ships, including 2 offshore patrol vessels, NNS Centenary and NNS Unity, 2 helicopters, 1 ship each from US, Portugal, Morocco participated in the Lagos area. It was a 12-day exercise to see about protecting the Gulf of Guinea, which is where Nigeria lives. Now I know in, was it Ghana? Somewhere anyway, one of them West African countries, the Chinese have been robbing all the fish. Like, they'll go in, and when it comes to being seen to trawling fish in this country, I can't remember which country it was. Trawling fish is illegal. I think I might have covered it in one of the videos already, but there's a video on it, and basically what the Chinese do, they go in, they trawl all the fish, and then just go out of those waters, and then, that's it, happy days. But I think there's like hundreds of them there now. They're absolutely smashing, they're just emptying the seas of all fish, because, well, it's not even like Chinese people eat that much African fish per se. They've got the full Pacific Ocean there to sort of farm from. It's just Israel, isn't it? Just clearing. They've done it in the Mediterranean, with the, the sonar, where they bleep. They just send up bleeps and the fish don't know where they're going, which is why you get all sorts of dolphins and whales. I know they're not fish, but, they're forever beaching, aren't they? And, well, the fish have been depleted in the North Atlantic, and now they're hitting the African coast, the South Atlantic on the west, so, and the Chinese are doing it for Israel, and the Jews are the well poisoners, and they're also the destroyers, aren't they? Destroyers of worlds. There has been an uptick both in this extremist activity as well as an uptick in just the challenges associated with governance issues and governance problems in the Sahel that have led to this increase in violence. France intervened in the region where it was once the main colonial power to defeat the Islamist insurgency in Mali in 2013, but the terror groups have since regrouped and mushroomed, raising questions about Paris's strategy. Well, I was going from Valence in sort of mid-France into Paris, and when I was heading into Paris, one of the road signs, one of the overhead road signs, one of the main road signs, said Villejuif, and then it said Paris. And I said to the driver, like, what does that mean, Villejuif? And he went, oh, it's just an old part of Paris. So I thought, no, it isn't. Paris is Jew Central, and Marseille, which we haven't got to, but Marseille in France, southern France. Well, wait till you read about what's in Marseille. We'll go through that another time, but let's continue on here. So the past year has seen a surge of violence incidents with more than 5,000 deaths in the Sahel over the last 5 months alone, an increase of 46% on the same period of a year earlier, according to the Armed Conflict Location and Event Data Project, which is part funded by the US State Department. So as we've just seen, there's billions of oil being got in the region. And I was thinking about this today with the spring of the British Empire. The police were born. There were no police, but the police were born to protect the merchants. Well, that's the Jews, isn't it? Because we know it is anyway, because the Rothschilds and all of the shenanigans that were going on after the Napoleonic Wars, with the Rothschild getting in as the MP without having to convert to Christianity. They changed the law to accommodate a Jew. Then Disraeli was in, he was a converso. So the whole thing was just like starting to get Jewed up, and it was the British Empire. And then you've got people like Aaron Kosminski, the Jew, staying out of the limelight as a Jew for over 100 years, as the Jack the Ripper. These are the types of, like, Vladimir Lenin was not known to be a Jew for almost 100 years later. I think it was like 70, 80 years later. They're just constantly on the march for keeping everything about Jewish involvement in these things out of the main psyche, like out of the mass communication. So the spike in violence has forced thousands to leave their homes. In January 2018, Niger had no people internally displaced by the unrest in Mali. It now has 63,000 along with 55,000 Malian refugees, according to the UNHCR, with roughly 100,000 displaced in Burkina Faso since July. Instability in Mali affects the neighbours. Increased instability in Burkina Faso affects theirs, says Rear Admiral Berg, and I'm concerned that it could move south and affect the Ivory Coast and other coastal nations. Is it like Gabon, Chad, Congo, Democratic Republic of Congo? There's a ruck of nations all along that way. So and Nigeria as well. You've got Nigeria there. That place sparks. Oh my God, there just be absolute chaos. I was just looking at how Lagos became the most powerful city in Africa and largest city in Africa. Just looking at that. Every businessman's dream. It has a very prosperous market environment. Sure it has. But it just looks to me like what they've done with China, which is basically, just turn it into America, don't they? Let's have a little, see if it's got enough bite on it. No, the feed's rubbish, sorry. It'll just start, won't it, and then we'll have noise in the background. So, Niger is at the heart of international, told you, didn't I? See, there's the celebration of African culture. Looks like East Berlin, or some other communist hellhole. Come on, guys, get with the program. Oh, we are. So yeah, it's just a joke, isn't it? Celebrating African culture, typical of. Oh, this guy's got something to say. It's a 33-minute video. December in Lagos is a place that the world needs to know about. Help me spread the message. So you can help him spread the message if you want. So Niger is at the heart of international counter-terrorism. Niger is at the heart of international counter-terrorism strategies for the region. Niger. US civilian presence has roughly trebled over the past decade. The US Air Force is building a $110 million base for armed drones near Agadez in the country's desert centre, an ancient trans-Saharan trading town where aid workers dealing with the flow of migrants attempting to reach Europe mix with barely private contractors and service personnel. So what do you get for 110 million these days in Niger? According to the military, it is the largest construction project the Air Force has ever undertaken on its own. Washington is also building a new embassy, signalling its commitment to Israel. Well, it actually says to the country and region, but, it's Israel's satellite, isn't it? Donald Trump in the House. Mr. Mutari dismisses criticism that the increased presence of Western forces is acting as a recruiting tool for terrorists, insisting that the US and France are in Niger at his government's request and only until the jihadi threat is neutralised. The Islamists recruited before the arrival of these bases, he says. Once the situation has changed, there will be no reason for the military arrangements to continue. But suspicions remain. Prominent civil society activist Nuhu Arzika characterises the deployment of international forces in Niger as a bid to capture its resources and predicts that local authorities will use Western military might to stay in power, echoing the criticism that France in particular is popping up strongmen in the region. Well, we know France is Jewish. She looked a bit Jewish, didn't she? Isn't that a horrible god? So she's Florence Parley. Do you know what? Let's just have a look at synagogues in Niger. See what it says about synagogues in Niger. The Igbo Jews from outside Nigeria founded 2 synagogues in Nigeria. African Jewish communities. The Igbo Jews of Nigeria, African synagogues, the history of Jews in Niger, the voice in the synagogue. Niger's crisis foretold. Synagogue, Joshua accuses commentators of killing Nigeria. So he goes to Nigeria when you put in Niger. So there's not much, let's have a look at news. That was like in all. Criminal neglect of Nigeria's tourism sector. So Jews. We all know ISIS is Israel, don't we? Surely. So Williams, DeVille University corruption. Slavery is currently practiced in Mauritania, Mali, Niger, Chad and the Sudan. And the world's Christians and Jews are oppressors and Muslims are victims. Increasingly the classics of Western. That's in Longview News Journal. slavery is currently practiced. We need to look at that. I'm interested in the cartoon. It looks like a Jew talking to her. Yeah, look at this. Unavailable due to legal reasons. We recognise you are attempting to access this website from a country belonging to the European Economic Area, including the EU, which enforces the GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation, and therefore access cannot be granted at this time. That's helpful, isn't it? Well, there was another link there of the same thing. Access denied. That was about the Jews and the Christians apparently being, setting the Muslims as victims. I always thought the Muslims were really good at math. Can't they put two and two together and work out that Israel did 9/11? They have all them mosaics, don't they? They're always writing the geometrical art because they can't depict human form or something. So they're supposed to be Jim Dandy at the old geometrics, but none of them can work out 9/11 was an Israel job, Mossad job. So in addition to its Naimi base, France has a second near the Libyan border and gets support from Germany, Romania and Italy. European countries have also ramped up diplomatic ties. The UK plans to open an embassy in the capital next year, and a large EU-led security forces training programme operates across the region. Oh, wait till we get to China and Africa a minute. It's going to blow your mind. In light of all this European embassy building and all this and that. So in the prospect of a fresh surge in migration, says one senior diplomat based in Niamey, that is key to European engagement in the Sahel. Long-term concern over irregular migration is as high as that on the terror threat. Well, we're supposed to be in a war on terror, aren't we? It was declared, but they've never said it's over. So basically it must be immigration as part of a war effort, some sort of war, which we know it is, the genocide of Europeans. So the diplomats referring to Niger's 7.1 births per woman, a record nearly matched by some of its neighbours. Europe has realised that the two continents are very close together, says Frank de Muren, head of the EU's training mission in Niger, which has prepared 13,000 police, border patrol and national guardsmen since 2012. The migration flow during its peak 2014 to 2016, i.e. 2015 when Merkel said, you can all come to Germany, was the real wake-up call to say what is going on over there affects immediately what happens in Europe, which it doesn't, because Israel has such dominance over the politics in Europe that it's basically, the Europeans are rendered helpless. Basically, we've got, videos like this which is highlighting what's going on in Europe, but we haven't got any control of our governments. They're absolutely out of control, 100%. There's nothing that anything the government ever says or does that was within, home nations' interests in Europe now. No way. I mean, I could go on. Let's see if I can Norwegian funding. I've tried to look for this before for Amazon. Colombian forest, Colombian rainforest. They were saying that Norway and UK are collaborating to give. Look at that! Is Norwegian money funding the Congo deforestation? Norwegian government report sharply critical of funding. Oh yeah, I found it. Maybe. Yeah. So Colombia grants historic protections to rainforest indigenous groups. So Colombia announced that the country intends to add 8 million hectares to its protected areas. It's more described as unprecedented. Colombia's Juan Manuel Santos announced Tuesday that the country intends to add 8 million hectares to its protected areas. The same day, Santos also signed a decree granting indigenous communities. The announcement comes as agricultural activity is rushed to fill the vacuum left by demobilization of FARC. Maybe the power struggles have moved from South America, like obviously this 8 million hectares is just going to be more cocaine factory, and actually all of the thingy now is, the focus is in Africa to get as many Africans with a machine gun ready to come to Europe, because I'm telling you, they can just fly in as many Africans as they consider necessary to wipe the Europeans out. Each one with a machine gun backed up by the Chinese. Dead simple. So Norway has committed $250 million towards Colombia's initiative. According to a joint statement at the event posted by the Norwegian government. Like, that's a 250 million I didn't even know of, but I know that they'd pledged along with UK 100 million in an earlier thing. Oh, maybe it's the same one, I don't know. Yeah. Germany, Norway and the United Kingdom. A joint declaration. Like, no one I know of, no British in UK were ever asked about like giving hundreds of millions to the Colombian rainforest. We've got some serious poverty, and they want to give it to Colombian rainforests. So that's Macron, the French Jew, Lachi. I don't think he's Jewish, but he sure loves him some Jewishness, like. For the US, the priority is security, the securities markets. It scaled back direct tactical assistance in Niger after 9 soldiers, including 4 of its own, were killed in a 2017 ambush by ISIS-linked jihadis, Jews, or people working for Jews. Instead, it favours training and intelligence operations. In other words, it favours not finding out that Israel is behind it all. And although it was previously announced that it would cut about 10% of its 7,000 personnel across Africa, the US military in February began weekly cargo flights from AFRICOM's headquarters in Germany to Ghana to supply troops in West Africa, suggesting a long-term commitment. No more wars for Israel. Washington's continued involvement in the region is partly explained, says a senior foreign defense official in Niamey, by concerns that countries in the Sahel would become staging grounds for attacks on the West. In the Sahel, you have the governments who are unable to address their security issues. You have limited economic development. Well, the report that we read earlier, where they've got billions and billions, hundreds of billions of barrels of oil getting dragged out of the earth, that does that not fund anything more than machine guns and Toyota Jeeps? Have they not got anything better to the money distribution is always a problem, because the Jew is never going to let the money go out of the central banking system, and that's exactly why I'm saying that, trace the history back to who owns the lion's share of the control of the banking. What was it? I'm sure Meyer Rothschild, the Jewish head of the Rothschild banking. I don't care who sets the laws, i.e. the politicians, the lawmakers, give me control of the money. Like Meyer Lansky of Murder Inc., the Jewish mafia boss, says, who do I need to pay round here to get things done? It's like it's so out in the open. Europe and these big open spaces, we don't want terror groups to set up in these big open spaces, the official says. In Afghanistan, there were ideological similarities between the Taliban and Al-Qaeda, which don't exist here, but there's a concern about that happening. Oh, excuse me. Poverty trap. Niger sits at the bottom of the UN Human Development Index. So there again, it's perfect for the taking, isn't it? Perfect for the taking. So the life expectancy is, it's in the lower grades as well. Multi-dimensional poverty. What the hell? Human Development Index. So Aurelian Toby, Senior Research on Mali at the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute, says such comparisons are misguided. He would say that, wouldn't he? It's like saying, it's not Israel who's behind it all, isn't it? It's a total lie. At the moment, we haven't seen any international attacks. Well, we have. 2015, there was an international attack on Europe. We've seen regional ones, and on America as well, Canada. These are all attacks on the people, because it's all genocide. So we've seen regional ones where they use Mali or the Sahel to attack Abidjan, the capital of the Ivory Coast, he says. They don't really have the capability to attack the US or France, for instance, at the moment. There are a lot of Western ideas being imported from the Middle East and being applied to the Sahel, such as the migration of ISIS fighters to Africa. But that is something that we're just not seeing. Still, the region remains at the senior defence. Do you know what? He's saying that they're not seeing that. Well, apparently we are, because that's exactly what this report's saying. So someone's either the FT, the Financial Times has got it wrong, or Mr. Head in Sweden, Aurelian Toby, the senior researcher, the expert, he's got it wrong. Someone's got it wrong somewhere, and I'm tending to think that it's our man in Sweden there, because it looks very much to me like Africa is brewing, and it's all being triggered by the Jew. Still, the region remains, as the senior defence official puts it, an alphabet soup of bad actors. There we go, that sounds more mature. Among the Islamic State and of the Greater Sahara, Jama al-Nusrat al-Islam wal Muslimin, a coalition of 4 groups including the Saharan branch of the Al-Qaeda of the Islamic Maghreb, the Al-Murabitun and the Ansarul Islam in Burkina Faso. The groups count thousands of fighters between them. Thousands? You're talking like, what did they say? The French in Niger have got 4,500 themselves, so they're probably, I would imagine, crack troops. They've got every resource of NATO, because it is the North Atlantic Treaty Organisation, and France is under threat. So what the heck? The groups count thousands of fighters between them, have gained power by co-opting nomadic ethnic Fulani groups, providing services local governments cannot, or promising jobs, marriage, or religious enlightenment to disaffected youths. Well, that's classic Judaism right there. Tear down all of the fabric of the societies and then start offering the benevolence then. Our terrorist group can help you do this, our terrorist group can help you do that. And the options for the youth, who can be young, angry, desperate, disillusioned, want to do well, and you sell them it packaged well. What resources have Israel got that they can enter into these poor countries, or at least these countries without actually money in circulation? They're not poor countries at all, they're as rich as they've ever been, and they've obviously been there for a certain number of thousands of years, and the populations are on the increase. So just the mathematics here, it all comes out, doesn't it? So the Sahel is the home to a variety of national, multilateral, regional and international security forces. Well, the banking going on there to pay these people the money to be there. There must be lots of banks there. The most visible of which is MINUSMA, the UN's 16,000 strong peacekeeping mission to Mali, considered the most dangerous for UN troops, which operates alongside French and local forces. And these are the migrants. I think that's sugar cane that they're actually all eating there. But why can't these people just be left alone? Why can't they be protected to live their own lives in their own countries, happy, having their own their own destiny in their own hands? Who's stopping Israel? The transnational nature of the extremist groups prompted 5 Sahel countries, Mauritania, Burkina Faso, Niger, Mali and Chad, to form the G5 Sahel Force, which has the freedom to cross borders. The eventual hope is that it will have 5,000 troops, but the force created in 2014 has faced funding and equipment shortages, and last June its headquarters in central Mali was bombed, forcing it to move to the capital, Bamako. So, Israel's not so fast funding these people who are the nationalists. The terror groups of the Sahel are more opportunistic than ideological, say analysts, and tend to work more collaboratively. You're not seeing typical fighting between Islamic State and Al-Qaeda elements in Mali, says one Western government source. They're united in their common interest of primarily pushing back on Western military presence and pushing out the central governments, so they have more operating room to install whatever government they see fit. Well, isn't that self-autonomy? Is that not something that we've seen before, when a nation is claiming self-autonomy and then it's like it gets carpet bombed to pieces? Because that's basically what's going to happen to these people as they get pushed up north to enter into Europe and pushed down south to go, finish off South Africa, the mess down there. At France's airbase in Niamey, the commanding officer for Operations Bahrain, Major General Frederick Blachon, explains his country's operations, which are spread across a territory the size of Europe. So the base next to that of the US is home to 3 of the country's 5 Reaper drones, which fly daily surveillance missions, mostly in Mali and the Niger border region, identifying possible terrorist targets for the 4 Mirage fighter jets that operate from the base. So Niger is the poorest country in West Africa. Its gross domestic product per capita is $0. Algeria is $4, is it? Oh, I see. Sorry, it's not zeros. That's applying to the numbers at the bottom. So that would be 4,000, 3,000, 2,000, 1,000. And Niger's roughly about what, 500. So gross per capita is about 500. Yeah, about $500 per head. You know, each person makes about $500 there a year. Burkina Faso about 75, Chad about 85, Benin about 90, Mali about 90, Nigeria is on $2,000 a year, and Algeria is flying at 4.25, something like that, or 4.25. We have to restore the presence of the state, which has never been very, very present in these areas. The idea is to create the conditions in order for the government to reinstall or install administration and governance, he says. The task is complicated by age-old conflicts among nomadic peoples for whom colonial-drawn borders are largely meaningless. So what's the problem? Just let them get on with it. In a region where population growth and climate change are rapidly diminishing available sources. You mean like the hundreds of billions of barrels of oil that are being basically stolen, isn't it? You know, they're stealing it, creating poverty, and then arming up the, the oppositions. You just know that there's going to be Jews all over it, because there's money involved, and there's weapons involved, and there's, you know, all sorts of terrorism involved. So that it's like history dictates that's what Jews do. They have the keys to the drugs cabinets, they have the keys to the armory, they have the keys to the bank, you know, they have the keys to all of the public offices that the public don't have. Even the Public Records Office in London is the old Domus Conversorum, where the Jews are said to have been expulsed out of England. Well, you know, they maintained the Domus Conversorum. The House of Conversos was maintained in London up until 1968, when it became the Public Records Office. You just don't know Jews, that's what it is. You've got to really get these things under the microscope. The task is complicated by age-old conflicts among nomadic peoples for whom colonial borders are largely meaningless in a region where population growth and climate change are rapidly diminishing available resources. At the very foot of the crisis, well, the Sahel is like a desert belt, so, you know, this is how good the Jew is at parasiting. It's actually raping the desert and turning it into a barren land. At the very root of the crisis, this is a struggle for resources, and above this crisis you have terrorist armed groups profiting from and exploiting this situation. He says the conflicts are very, very old. It's not only about terrorism, yeah, but it's about terrorism. That's what it's about. Major General Blachon says the goal is not eliminating terrorist groups. Well, that's fair play, isn't it? Don't eliminate them. It sounds very Mossad. It's not about eradicating these threats. That's just not feasible. Well, make it feasible. What would it take for it to be feasible? You know, what about leaving the people alone to enjoy their own resources without letting Israel pilfer it all? He says, but to prevent these threats from gaining power or spreading into other countries, well, it is spreading into other countries. That's exactly what the old report's about. Doesn't he get the Financial Times? Isn't this guy on the internet? Who is this Major General Blachon? Flaming Nora. Our presence is meant to bring confidence to all those people who want to invest in development in this area. The French forces will not stay forever, so it's French. Oh, Blachon. Sounds like blank. Not blank as in white, but blank as in Czech. African soldiers, Major General. No, he's not there, but a Major General is a military rank used in many countries. It's derived from the older rank of Sergeant Major General. So he's just some mush, isn't he? South Africa's got nuclear arsenal. South Africa's a great country that's been ruined. Right. South Africa police seize 167 rhino horns after tip-off. Right, let's have a look at these other things that I wanted. Oh, some banjo stuff I was looking at there. Right. Where are we? Okay. So, this is about China's One Belt, One Road. Implications for China's One Belt, One Road strategy. China's Belt and Road Initiative forces intertwining economic, political and security ties between Africa and China, advancing Beijing's geopolitical interests. This is March 22nd, 2019. So, launched in 2016, One Belt Road, presented internationally as the Belt and Road Initiative, is China's signature vision for reshaping its global engagements. It is strategic and comprehensive in scope and an essential component of the Communist Party of China twin objectives of achieving national rejuvenation and restoring China as a great power. Well, they've got the most nukes on the planet, haven't they? Now spans 3 continents and touches 60% of the world's population. The 65 or so countries that have so far signed onto the programme, including approximately 20 from Africa, account for 30% of the world's GDP and 75% of the energy reserves. So someone's seeing that Africa is profitable, and yet the Africans aren't. So there's parallel universes going on here. Some 50 Chinese state-owned companies are implementing 1,700 infrastructure projects around the world, worth about $900 billion. So that's like $1 trillion, isn't it? Enough. One Belt, One Road has been written into the state and ruling party constitutions as strategic priorities for China to attain great power status by the middle of the 21st century. Remember, this is actually Israel. All of China's leaders have advanced the quest since the founding of the People's Republic of China, but the pursuit has accelerated under President Xi Jinping. But that's his remit, isn't it? Strategic rationale. The end of the state of One Belt, One Road is the building of the community of common destiny for mankind, defined as a new global system of alternative economic, political and security interdependencies, with China at the centre. For this reason, Chinese leaders describe One Belt, One Road as a national strategy with economic, political, diplomatic and military elements, not a mere series of initiatives. Our board directly supports many of the elements of China's national security strategy. At a macro level, it seeks to reshape the world economic order in ways that are conducive to Beijing's drive for great power status. One Belt, One Road has 2 components: The Silk Road economic belt establishes 6 land corridors connecting China's interior to Central Asia and Europe. It includes railroads to Europe, oil and gas pipelines from the Caspian Sea to China, and a high-speed train network connecting Southeast Asia to China's eastern seaboard. The Maritime Silk Road establishes 3 blue economic passages knitted together through a chain of seaports from the South China Sea to Africa, and also direct trade to and from China. One Belt, One Road also increases Beijing's control of critical global supply chains and its ability to redirect the flow of international trade. Central to these efforts are moves to open new sea lines of communication and expand China's strategic port access around the world. In 2017, Chinese state-owned companies announced plans to buy or secure majority stakes in 9 overseas ports, all located in regions where China plans to develop new sea lanes. This is in addition to the 40 ports in Africa, Asia and Europe in which Chinese state-owned firms hold stakes worth a combined $40 billion. China's return on investment from increased port access and supply chains is not all about economics. In 5 cases, Djibouti, Walvis Bay in Namibia, Gwadar in Pakistan, Hambantota in Sri Lanka and Piraeus in Greece, China's port investments have been followed by regular People's Liberation Army, Navy deployments and strengthened military agreements. In this way, financial investments have been turned into geostrategic returns. Just saying about Piraeus in Greece there, I wonder if that's why, the Greek felt their economy get busted so that China could come in and sort of be like the benevolent Jew and, set up base, basically exploit the poverty, the contrived poverty that was thrust on Europe and her countries. So China's 13th 5-year plan, a document adopted in 2016 that provides long-range implementing guidance in 5-year increments, calls for the construction of maritime hubs to safeguard China's maritime rights and interests as it embarks on laying a foundation for maritime great power status. By 2020, the centenary of the founding of the People's Republic of China, 2049 has been set as the year when it will become the world's main maritime power. I think China was the maritime power for about 400 years before the British took over, even though the Americans defeated the British on the sea in, 1812. Accordingly, China's drive to acquire port access and secure supply lines are likely to intensify alongside the expansion of the Maritime Silk Road. In 2010, only 1/5 of the world's 50 largest deep-water ports had any Chinese investment. By 2019, it had increased to 2/3. The China Ocean Shipping Company, which controls most Chinese overseas port holdings, is now the world's 4th largest shipping fleet. Beijing's merchant marine has quadrupled since 2009 to become the world's 2nd largest. It now moves more global cargo than any other country. China's got a certain amount of gratitude that it needs to start showing to the rest of the world, because it is the rest of the world that's allowed China to come out of its insular, introverted way. It wasn't Deng Xiaoping making a statement in 1983 to say that China should open up. No, it's about what the rest of the world has done for China. China is living on a dream. That's what China's doing. It's being given an artificial construct which is modernism, and it's all being funded by Israeli Jewish banking practices that are raping everywhere. to fund this bubble so China can be active in Africa and everywhere else. You know, it's just it's mind-bogglingly stupid economics. It's like literally bad housekeeping. It's just creating a shitstorm. That's exactly what it is. So Beijing also plans to use the artery of routes envisaged under OBOR to reduce China's dependence on maritime choke points that could be contested by rivals. The PLA is locked in territorial disputes with Japan, Taiwan, Vietnam, South Korea, Malaysia, Indonesia, the Philippines and Brunei in its so-called near seas. Basically, no one wants to do business with China because what are you going to get? Plastic toys, cheap, thin clothes that, you know, and just general low quality produce. This raises the risk. Also low quality produce at the cost of high quality produce when it was actually allowed to be made in the home nations. So this raises the risk that they could create a blockade during a crisis that would disrupt its shipping to counter the threat. One Belt One Road is being positioned to reroute traffic to Chinese-built port clusters in Sudan, Djibouti, Gwadar, Hambantota, Colombo and Myanmar to bypass narrow choke points in the South China Sea. So if you're literally, say like you're that guy behind Xi Jinping there, or any of those guys, and Xi Jinping's, you know, telling you how Israel is dominating Chinese politics, and all of those bozos behind, none of these geniuses have got an inkling to work out that actually this is just a big Ponzi scheme. You know, there was even a book called Currency Wars written by a Chinese guy who went to Wall Street and come back and explained that, you know, the whole thing is just one big rip-off, and it wasn't the guy who's being in jail, he's just a patsy, it was some other guy. It's called Currency Wars anyway, you can look it up. As a party political instrument, OBOR strengthens Xi's authority at home. It's a central element of Xi Jinping thought, which is Netanyahu slash who's the other bozo, Henry Kissinger, which is inscribed in the state and party constitutions as a guiding philosophy. This further enables Xi to marshal every resource at his disposal to see his signature program through. Funding for One Belt One Road comes from policy lenders, so-called because their lending decisions are responsive to presidential and geostrategic preferences. They include the China Development Bank and the Export-Import Bank of China, which have committed over $1 trillion. The Silk Road Fund holds $40 billion in investment funds. See? In investment funds? Do you think they're coming from China? Well, think again. And it is supervised by China's central bank. China's central bank's Rothschild. The Asia Infrastructure Investment Bank, whose remit now includes Africa, has a capital base of $100 billion. Additional funds come from China's foreign exchange reserves, and its sovereign wealth fund, communist sovereignty, which holds $7 trillion and $220 billion respectively. So the foreign exchange reserve is at $7 trillion US. And how much is America in debt? Is it about 7 trillion or is it more like 17 trillion? I think UK is about 3 trillion, isn't it? Let's have a look. UK debt count. flies off the scale. I don't know if you've seen it. Wake up, computer. US debt. So by 2012, yeah, there's live counter. Let's have a look. Every second, Britain increases its debt by 5,000. Oh, we are, yeah. 2 trillion, I was right. 2 trillion. And the US debt count clock is, I know the Russian one's like half a trillion, isn't it? You know, they're all dealing in debt, but no one will admit that Putin's just a little Jew lackey. Some countries owe their entire growth to the relatively small islands in the north east of the European mainland. Today, Great Britain is heir to the Commonwealth of Nations and heir to a national debt that began its increase at the time of William III. I think William III was like, with the madness of King George, didn't he get put in as a puppet for the Bank of England? Or another puppet for the Bank of England? What happened at that time? He basically set the cornerstone for what was to become the Bank of England, and his famous institution would finance. Oh, William III, that's William of Orange. So that would be the Bank of England Act 1694, isn't it? Which apparently he says, you know, he didn't know what it meant, that he was borrowing 10,000 for 1694. The Tonnage Act. You can get the full thing either on PDF or, you know, because they always repeal and they're always busy, aren't they? See there. That 140,000 is the loan that keeps Britain forever in debt. Stupid phone won't what's it called? Focus. But if we go to the table of contents, introductory text. So, I mean, I'm on legislation.gov.uk, Bank of England Act. I'm not making this up, people. So, one day, Noddy was driving, this is what it says. One day, Noddy was driving along in his Noddy mobile, and he saw Big Ears. Hey, Big Ears, how's things? You know, it might as well be Noddy in Noddyland. An act for granting to their majesties several rates and duties upon tonnage of ships and vessels, and upon beer, ale, and other liquors for securing certain recompenses and advantages in the said act mentioned to such persons as shall voluntarily advance the sum of £1,500,000 towards carrying on the war against France. So the other one was 140,000, wasn't it? Because it's in the same act. We, your majesty's most dutiful and loyal subjects, the commons assembled in Parliament for the further supply of your majesty's extraordinary occasions for and towards the necessary defence of your realms, do humbly present your majesties with the further gift of the impositions, rates and duties hereinafter mentioned. Well, that's basically what's going on in Africa now, isn't it? So that was 140,000 to be kept apart in the exchequer. So there's your foreign money. if it's not kept in the exchequer, then it's in what things they may nevertheless deal. So, provided that nothing herein contained shall anyways be construed to hinder the said corporation from dealing in bills of exchange, which means debt, or in buying or selling gold bullion, or silver, or in selling any goods, wares, or merchandise whatsoever. It's funny, merchandise is spelled the American way, and now we don't spell it that way. Whatsoever which shall be really de bona fide be left or deposited with the said corporation for money lent and advanced thereon, and which shall not be redeemed at the time agreed on, or within 3 months after, or from selling such goods as shall or may be the produce of lands purchased by the said corporation. And obviously it's not going to say who are the said corporation, but we could hazard to guess that it is the City of London Corporation, Tel Aviv. I do have a good document that we will go through in another time. City of London Corporation. And what this document says, look at that. Barking Power Limited, I never knew. Barking Power Limited, Bloomberg Company Research. Here's Barking Power Station. It's a parent organisation, it's the City of London Corporation. Barking Powerhouse. So it's a private limited company. It's active. It was incorporated on the 2nd of March 1989. Its next accounts due on 31st of March 2019, which is gone. They make electricity. The previous company name was Neat Don Limited. I'd wager that not many people have ever heard of these. This is the people. So you've got the filter officers, 115 officers, Sisech Limited. Holborn Viaduct, registered in EU. Philip Gregory, or Gregory Philip, got one of them Dewey names where it can be either way. Like Benjamin P. Judah is now Judah P. Benjamin, but it wasn't. It was definitely Benjamin P. Judah before. Derek Young, the Jews to use the word young as a clerk. Barking Power Station, Checkers Lane, Dagenham. Angus Tyndale Norman resigned. Rosenthal, Peter Rosenthal's got to be Jew on it. He resigned. Topman resigned. Resigned twice from different addresses. Look, Peter John Topman, secretary, resigned, and Peter John Topman, corresponding address different, resigned. Fraser McGregor Alexander, Paul Ashton, Gregory Bacon, Dave Baker, Sir William Barlow, sounds dodgy, Stephen Baisby, Gary Bauer. Say Bauer as Gary Bauer again. He's Canadian, he's the director, but he's resigned. They say that was the old Rothschild name, but I don't know how true that is because Jews never used to use a surname. It's another thing that needs to be gone over. So yeah, plenty of Brown, that's another name they use. Do you think Bush has been known? Philip Castanet, Bit of flamenco there. John Joe Cochen, Collison Crackett, D. Champlain, got to be French Norman, that, Downs, John L. And there's pages and pages of that. That's London City Corporation. Oh yeah, there's the US debt clock. We can see which one it is there. I think it says it's at 22 trillion in debt. So yeah, debt per citizen is 67,000 and debt per taxpayer is 181,000. So work that one out. That's on usdebtclock.org. Good luck with that. Laos government defends racist Chinese restaurant. Lagos government defends racist Chinese restaurant as more victims speak up. The Lagos state government on Tuesday cleared the Chinese restaurants accused by some Nigerians of racism, even as yet another Nigerian who was barred from entering the restaurant spoke to the Punch. The Lagos state government's position made known via the press statement issued by the Commissioner for Tourism, Arts and Culture, Steve Ayorinde, said that findings by his officers sent to investigate the veracity of the claim showed that the allegations were false. They can't upset the Jew. The two officers who went there on Monday did so incognito and found the allegations to be false. The officers were served without any questions or discrimination. They also took photographs without being noticed. Our officers also observed that the restaurant had a number of Nigerians working inside there, and did similarly observe that pepper soup, a Nigerian delicacy, is also on the menu. More importantly, the restaurant has been registered with the Lagos State Ministry of Tourism, Arts and Culture since 2016 as required by law. Well, I will say that, in Britain, there's no thingy for natives to be employed. You'll just see endless Muslims, Jews, Chinese. You'll never see, unless there be pretty young girls working in the Muslim shops, like the Paki shops as we call them. Or not always pretty young girls, but sometimes what we sometimes call boilers. Chinese contractors of the China Civil Engineering Construction Corporation, who are constructing the Lagos-Ibadan rail project, have returned to Nigeria, having left shortly before the general elections. Presidential National Assembly governorship for the state of Houses of Assembly elections were held across the country in February and March 2019. The Minister of Transportation, Rotimi Amaechi, stated on Friday that the CCECC workers were back on site and had commenced work on the Lagos-Ibadan rail project. On why the construction workers left the project site during the elections, the minister said that was the company's procedure. He said that their company procedure, they said, where they are doing jobs, if there are elections, they will go back to their country and come back after the elections. So the Chinese just get out the way, basically, in case things come on top. So what's this one now? Chinese firm to boost rural Nigeria economy with a road project. Does anyone not see the madness in this? Like, why can't Nigeria build their own roads? The Chinese construction firm on Thursday formally connected the construction of a road to open up rural areas in Nigeria's northeastern state of Gombe, aiming to boost the local economy. The road construction handled by the 18th Engineering Company Nigeria Limited, a subsidiary of the China Railway Construction Company, will open up at least 3 communities in the Yamalta Debai local government area of Nigeria when completed. Well, God help them. The 9-kilometre road project linking 3 farming communities in the area, Boltongo, Nono and Deba, will be completed within 15 months according to local officials. Amid traditional music and dance, hundreds of local people trooped out en masse to welcome the Chinese construction engineers to an opening ceremony of the project. There's no pictures of that. Some villagers have been taking turns to offer foods to the construction workers, he told Xinhua. This is that guy, Usman, what's his name? Ahmed Usman, the emir and paramount ruler of Deba, said more nearby communities will benefit from the construction and this will spur economic development and growth in the area. Like Nigeria is old as the hills and has been fine all that time, and now the Chinese have to give them a road for Israel, and they're going to help economic growth. Well, don't they feel important? The alarming rate of foreigners assaulting Nigerians in Nigeria, by Samuel Odoye, April the 8th, 2019, 4:19 p.m. Some events occur in Nigeria that can't possibly happen in another country. One big example of that is the case of expatriates who assault Nigerians, usually their staffs, and get away with it most of the times. It's a very African thing, isn't it, to end with the S on the end, like everything's pluralised. In an apparent insult on our rights as Nigerians, a Turkish national identified as Yalçın Oktem, alleged stabbed the accountant of Slavabogu Construction Company, Oluwaseun Ojo, in Ogbo, Osun State. He claimed Ojo disrespected him. The story began April 3rd, 2019, when Yalçın alleged approached Ojo for money to purchase drugs, which was given to him. However, Yalçın, who said to be the younger brother of the managing director of the company, became furious because Ojo did not write Mr. in front of his name on the voucher presented to him to sign for the money he collected, and he stabbed him in his rage. The power-drunk Turk also said he said to be allegedly fond of assaulting the workers and getting away with it. The allegation is detailed below as the victim Ojo narrated his ordeal to newsmen. So, a victim of foreigners' assault on Nigerian citizen in Nigeria. Well, turn on the Jew, Nigeria. You're getting a heads up here as who the only problem is. So yeah, this is just going on about like a Chinese worker who's cut off one of the right fingers of a Nigerian in a quarry. Mr. 23-year-old incurred the wrath of the Chinese for failing to quickly turn on the generator. So we got his finger cut off. So yeah, just give you a little taste of what Israel brings culturally. And look up Thai workers in Israel. How Chinese entrepreneurs are quietly reshaping Africa. Is that not interesting? That's on OZY.com. So Wilson Wu has big plans for the free trade zone. Didn't we talk about him the other day? He manages in Igbesa, a scruffy town in Ogun State. Yeah, he did. So this is the same article on a different thing, regurgitated. So how does Africa fit into the Belt and Road? The revival of trade routes along China's ancient Silk Road linking China to East Africa is being promoted by Chinese leaders as a symbol of China's commitment to Africa. according to Xi, Africa stands to benefit from OBOR because inadequate infrastructure is the biggest bottleneck to Africa's development, a view that is shared by many African leaders. Advocates of One Belt, One Road also point to the potential for spin-offs such as increased private Chinese investments in tourism, real estate and agriculture alongside infrastructure projects. OBOR is also increasingly seen as a catalyst for African regional economic integration and competitiveness. A study funded by the UN Economic Commission for Africa found that East Africa's exports could increase by as much as $192 million annually if new OBOR projects are used profitably. So that's on africacentre.org called Implications for Africa-China One Belt, One Road Strategy. Yeah, there's China's One Belt, One Road strategy. And Israel is about there, isn't it? Oh, stupid phones. You know what? They changed all the phones, so you couldn't take pictures of, like scanning because everyone was swapping all the files on Skype. So they put in two cameras which won't focus so well, as you can see. Not that this is a brilliant phone or anything. This is Judaism, this. You're just seeing, what's it called? Obsolescence. Controlled obsolescence. I mean, I'm holding it pretty still, but the focus is just not happening. I just want to get, Israel. That's all sort of trying to highlight. Why is it such a big secret to be hiding Israel all of a sudden? Come on, you open up. I bet it'll be blared or something. It's like it says it's 100%. Yeah. Right. Come on. So there's Harbin. Right, and there's Beijing. So you can see how close Harbin and Beijing are. Well, you would be able to if this phone wasn't so crap. Right, there's North Korea and Japan. And Russia, all that region there. There's India. So China's far. Look at the size of Mongolia. Right, so where was it we're looking at? Do the fella's gaff, isn't it? See, look at that. Not even Ashdod. Ashdod. It's an Ashdod. Ashdod Port, yeah. To Tel Aviv, did you see that one? Yeah. Ashdod Port Company, right, so this is the Grand Central Tel Aviv hub for the what we're looking at, the One Belt, One Road. Look where they are with the Suez Canal. Into the Mediterranean, into Europe. You know, back out from Europe, got Russia there. You got the whole of Asia, the whole of Africa, all just by that one little channel there, the Suez Canal. And the Ashdod port is overlooking it. Excuse me. So the port of Ashdod is one of Israel's two main cargo ports. Now, I live in a major port city and I've never heard of Ashdod. The port is located in Ashdod, about 40 kilometres south of Tel Aviv, and we know that Maersk has a headquarter, a HQ in Tel Aviv. Adjoining the mouth of the Lachish River, its establishment significantly enhanced the country's port capacity. It handles the largest volume of cargo containers annually of all Israel's ports. I think Haifa is another one, isn't it? Carrying humanitarian aid for the Gaza Strip. The Benevolent Jew also unload their cargo at Ashdod. The Benevolent Jew being the Israel Port Authority, which according to Gene Keaton, the US Port Authorities are the ones who run the courts. Now I know that in Britain we have the Cinque Act, which is said to be the sort of like the Jew. You've got the court Jew and the port Jew. Port Act, and basically the Barbary pirates. So the Cinque Act. The Confederation of Cinque Ports, historic series of coastal town Kent, Sussex, Essex, was originally formed for military and trade purposes, but is now entirely ceremonial. In other words, don't look here, guy. But there's all sorts of connotations from the act that still is ceremonial today, but not even ceremonial. It's just like all to do with all sorts of jurisdictions for offshore bond warehouses and all usual Jewy jibber jabber jabber. So the need to open another deep-water port arose in Israel's early years when it became clear that the expansion of the existing ports, Haifa and Eilat, could not ensure efficient handling of the increasing volume of export and import cargoes. The decision to start a new port was based on a number of considerations. The port meshes with the concern for population dispersal and the establishment of urban centres in the southern part of the country, which is the Negev Desert, where Jews get lost for 40 years apparently. It takes half an hour to cross by camel. The port substantially shortens the overland transport of cargoes to and from the southern and central parts of the country. The distance from the citrus groves at Rehovot to the port of Ashdod is 102 kilometres shorter than to Haifa's port, and the transport of potash from Sodom. Yet apparently potash is like massive. Because they have these under the Dead Sea, there's all sorts of like caves and caverns, and the Dead Sea is just like a big massive potash farm. So yeah, potash is salts, contain potassium. The name derives from, refers to plant ashes soaked in water in a pot. The primary means of manufacturing the product before the industrial area. The word potassium derived from potash, produced worldwide at amounts exceeding 90 million tonnes per year, mostly for use in manufacturing various types of fertilizer, constitute the single largest industrial use of element potassium in the world. Anyway, I think that's so potash deposits can be found all over the world. At present, deposits are being mined in Canada, Russia, China, Belarus, Israel, Germany, Chile, United States, Jordan, Spain and UK, Uzbekistan and Brazil, with the most significant deposits in Canada and Saskatchewan. Excessive respiratory disease can be a concern for potash miners throughout history due to the environmental hazards such as radon and asbestos. Potash miners are liable to develop silicosis. I think it's something that they put in cigarettes as well to help tobacco burn. But hey, what do I know, folks? So, yeah, Jews all the way down. See you later.